sky's not blue.
You need to understand that when the time comes, I'm going to be taking over.
Welcome back to the Cult House Podcast. I am your host, the scholar of spite and the Saturday Night Delight, Roger Riddell. Joining me today, he is the Duke of Spook, the Friar of Fear. Clasp your hands together and say Omen, Amen, because the boogeyman is here. He'll smother your brother. He'll twist your sister. He is the vocalist for the Murderdolls, the Frankenstein drag queens, and his solo band. He is Mr. Motherfucker himself, Wednesday 13. How you doing today, Wednesday?
What an introduction. Let me just applaud you for that. That was like, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I had to go all out this time because you're the only guest who's ever pointed out that I Ric Flair myself in the introduction.
There you go.
I had to double down on yours this time.
That's right, baby. Woo!
Yeah, so just to start off, I've noticed lately that you were posting on Instagram about the Halloween franchise, and I was wondering what you thought about Halloween Ends.
I'm glad that series has ended.
For now.
Well, I'm saying I'm glad that that trilogy has ended. It kind of started off positive, and then I just think I wasn't, for me, growing up on Michael Myers, that was not the way to do it for me, So, but again, for some people, this new Halloween trilogy is their first. So I'm just glad to see the character still having life. I'm glad to see people appreciating what struck me as a kid, and it's just to see, and going to that Halloween convention last weekend was insane to see how many other people love it as much as I do.
Yeah, I mean, the first two are probably some of my favorite horror movies of all time. And then I even love the goofy, like, supernatural stuff in 4 through 6. 2018, has probably one of my favorite continuous shots in any horror movie ever, when Michael's just moving through the homes of Haddonfield. Then Kills felt a little bit heavy-handed on whatever it was trying to do with its like little moral of the story that it was trying to shoehorn in there. And then Ends, I just, so many times in that movie, I couldn't tell if they were trying to make a Halloween movie or Twilight.
Yeah, I felt like there was a movie I grew up watching, or not movie I grew up watching, though. Let me rephrase that. There were movies that came out when I was younger, growing up, and there was an actor who's now he disappeared for a while, but he was huge in the 80s. His name's Patrick Dempsey. Then he came back in, like, I think, Grey's Anatomy, and he's the ladies' man, and he was like that back in the 80s. He was in so many movies, like teen kind of romance kind of comedies, and this character, whoever the last guy was in the last Halloween that they focused on more than Michael Myers, reminded me of that, and I just couldn't get it out of my head. And again, I don't want to shit on anybody's movies. Like I said, I'm glad to see that it still lives. Whether it's never going to be as good as those movies were to me when I was a kid, and I know that. So to expecting that is just dumb on my part to even think that. But going back again to these last 3 Halloweens. Last night before I went to bed, they've been showing movies on AMC, I think, like, just nonstop. And the second of that series was on last night. And I was reminded again, the first 10 minutes of that movie is amazing. Like, the way they went back to Halloween, like the original, and just everything, the Dr. Loomis, it gave me goosebumps. And then the movie just goes for me.
Yeah.
So I was, when I see stuff like that, I go, there's hope. There's somebody that's going to continue those ideas I was even talking to I did a podcast earlier this week. I was talking to some friends, and the guy that put on the Halloween convention last weekend, Sean Clark, I was asking him about, just because he's such knowledgeable in all this stuff with Halloween, knows everything. And I was like, has anybody ever tried to mix the two, the Halloween Season of the Witch and Michael Myers, and have something where, now I know they use those masks in the last three. There's like some dead bodies on like a merry-go-round in the park or whatever, and they use the mask. But like for me, like how cool would it be to see Michael Myers put on that fucking silver shamrock mask or something and take it elsewhere? That's the ideas I would like to see, but that's just me being the 80s retro nerd wanting to see those series together. But he was telling me that the original end of one of those movies was going to have, he said there was a cut that they edited, but there was an edit with the end of the movie, and they did put silver shamrock on the boxes, and they're putting Michael Myers mask in silver shamrock boxes. And I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So again, I don't know whose idea that was and why it got scrapped, but that sounds cool to me.
Wasn't there there's an explanation for the supernatural stuff in like 4 through 6, I think, where they try to make the connection that the mask that Michael originally wore as a kid was from the company that made those masks in Season of the Witch.
Is that what they tried to put together with the?
Yeah,
with
the masks were all just cursed or something.
Who knows? I mean, but it was never real. But that wasn't like the main thing that they focused on. Like, imagine, again, I've been watching all these since beginning of October. I've been watching all the Halloween movies, and I've seen Season of the Witch I don't know how many times now. And I was at the convention last weekend seeing all the actors, so I'm just geeking out about it. And I'm just like, that's such a cool opportunity there, because there's a lot. I mean, at the convention, there was a line to meet Tom Atkins, just as long to meet Nick Castle from the first. So I'm like, there was an equal thing there. So there is love for that movie. It took it 40 years, but it's I would like to see somebody go with that and mix the two and finally go, oh, Halloween 3 didn't have Michael Myers. Well, make it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point too that you had a minute ago. Sorry about the cough, by the way. I just had COVID like a month ago, so still getting rid of this like cough that's lingering. But yeah, so there's like the point that you had made about how like the newer movies are never going to give you the feeling, the exact feeling that you had the first time that you saw the Halloween movies when you were a kid. And that's kind of a thing that I've accepted over the years with like Star Wars, for example, where it's like the prequels have their flaws, but at the same time, as a teenager, I probably went into them expecting the same feeling that I had when I saw the original trilogy when I was like 8, and it just wasn't going to happen again because I'm not seeing Star Wars for the first time.
Right.
Yeah,
you just have to, as you get older and stuff, that's the smart approach. If you want to appreciate things, if you want to grow old and become a snob and just, and I'm very much in that category. I don't want to watch this. It's, but I'm trying to be better with things. I'm trying, like I was just talking with my lady about the new Exorcist, and I'm like, it came out today, I think. And I'm like, it looks so bad. Like, to me, it looks, but again, is it ever going to hit me the way the first one did? No, it's impossible to go back to that, because I'll never forget one of my earliest memories. I mean, I had to be 4 or 5, and The Exorcist was on TV, I think, for the first time. And I didn't know what an exorcist was. I don't know what anything is. And I never forget sitting there watching that movie, but more watching my mom watch that movie, and could see the fear coming over her throughout that. That scared me. I wasn't even really paying attention to the movie because I didn't know what it was. It's just a little, you know what I mean? Like, if you're 5 years old, you're not understanding what that is. But to watch my mom be terrified, that terrified me. And that's just a feeling that You know what I mean? Like you just can't explain it. And when you're that young and you don't know anything in the world, and you look at your parents and go, "Oh, well, if they're freaking out, I probably should freak out. If they're being cool, I'll be cool." But if your mom's, I'm just like, "Whoa, oh God, this is terrible." So there's no way that could ever be recreated for me. But
Yeah, I mean,
again,
how many times can you experience love at first fright, you know?
yeah, exactly. So again, it's for someone out there, they're going to be experiencing this Exorcist movie for the first time, and who knows, by the end of the year, they'll be watching the first one for the first time, and again, you know what I mean. So there's good in these remakes, even though they're not my favorite. They're going to open a door for some kid like me that's going to watch that one and then go back. That's the same way with music, you know. Like I grew up listening to Motley Crue and Twisted Sister and all these bands, and then I would read interviews and hear them talk about their favorite bands, and they would talk about Sweet and David Bowie and all these T-Rex and all these, and I'm like, oh, well, I got to go check that out, and then boom, you know what I mean? So it's all in the family. It's all good. And anyone that's wanting to watch a horror movie, whether it's a good one or a bad one, is a good thing because they're watching horror movies.
Yeah, and it's funny that you make the music comparison too, because the reason that I bought Alice Cooper's Love It to Death when I was in high school was because of an interview that you did in Metal Edge.
Oh, there you go. So you see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You wanted to know probably why I like that record so much, you know, and so I wanted to know why Nikki Sixx liked the band Sweet so much, or you know, so it all connects. It's all educating and learning stuff. And if you could turn somebody on to some old music or something like that, it's a cool thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So here in 2 weeks from today on October 20th, you're starting a 20th anniversary tour for the Murderdolls Beyond the Valley of the Murderdolls. Tell me a little bit about that and what fans can expect.
Well, actually, I it's 21 years now. Last year I was doing my 20 years of fear tour, and then this year makes it 21. So, and by the time I'm touring next year, they've been advertising it as 21. It'll be 22 years. So, yeah, it kicks off 2 weeks from today here at the Whiskey A Go Go, which is about 20 minutes from my house here, and it's going to be the first time that we are playing the music of Murderdolls solely. Like I'm not playing any Wednesday 13 solo music. This is all Murderdolls songs from the first and second record. And I went through the albums and I've picked out all of my favorites. I think all the fan favorites, and I've wiggled it into a 90-minute set. It's not every song we played, even though the band only had 2 records, we still put out like 40 songs. So we can't get them all in there, but I will promise you 99% of the stuff that you want to hear is in this set. And it's going to be fun, man. I'm excited because with the exception of songs like I Love to Say Fuck, or I've been playing that song forever. I play it with all my Wednesday 13 shows, but like there's songs that I haven't played, or I've only played with like Murderdolls or Frankenstein Drag Queens. And I definitely haven't played some of these songs in many, many years. So going back and revisiting Slip My Wrist and Love at First Fright and People Hate Me, songs I haven't played in 20 years, or maybe one here, like for a special show or something like that. But it's awesome to go back and listen to this, and having the time off from those records, I've been able to appreciate it a little more. Not that I didn't appreciate it before, but I can really appreciate it and just see what we did in that short time, and knowing that we did just those 2 records in 21 years. Still, people are talking about it today, and they're excited for this tour.
Yeah, and is it I guess bittersweet to be doing a 21st anniversary tour for the Murderdolls without Joey?
Yeah, it definitely, you know, and that's one reason why I didn't want to bill it Murderdolls or say this is Murderdolls and go out and it's not Murderdolls without Joey, for me. So to play these songs, I can't help but think about him. Even when we were doing, just a little small section of the show last year where we played a little section of Murderdolls songs, there were nights where it was easy and there were nights where it wasn't. I'm just thinking about him the whole time, and because it's still fresh in my with me, and it's still fresh with the fans, but yeah, it's but he's definitely there in spirit. We have our kick drum heads on the drum set for this tour are one for Ben and one for Joey. So we have those. So it's going to be a fun thing. It's a celebration of the music. It's a celebration of those guys. It's a celebration of the fans and just what we did in that short time. And just, it's going to be cool. It's going to be emotional and at some shows, and I can't wait to do it. We haven't played a show since May. So having this whole summer off, it's just like, I'm prepared. I've been training. I'm like Rocky. This is the big fight. So yeah.
Yeah, and I know we touched on, the early days of the Murderdolls a little bit the last time that you were on the show, but can you tell me a little bit about what the formation of the band was like? Because I know in 2001 you put out Viva Las Violence with Frankenstein Drag Queens, and like, to me, the sound of that record is really like pretty much at like the Murderdolls sound. And so like Murderdolls just kind of like feels like a really like easy continuation of where you had like reached with that band before linking up with Joey. So like, how did you initially I guess become friends with Joey, and what did the evolution of you transitioning from being in Frankenstein Drag Queens to doing Murderdolls with Joey kind of look like?
It all feels like it happened so fast. And when I tell the story, I think I like to tell stories, so I make it seem a lot longer. But I'll try to explain it as best as I can. So basically, Frankenstein Drag Queens had just recorded Viva Las Violence, and at that lineup of the band, as soon as we recorded it, our bass player just quit the band. He was the last original guy from the original formation of Frankenstein Drag Queens. And at that point, we're on our fourth release. The band's 6 years old by that point, 5 years old by that point. I've been through half a dozen people, and it was just getting to the point where I was, I had friends in my band. The guys in the band were cool dudes, but they weren't into what I was doing. I literally had to dress myself and then go, okay, this is what you're going to look like. You know what I mean? And I go, what do I do? I've never done this. So I was literally playing dress up for everybody to complete this image of what I wanted to do. So that was okay to do, but it wasn't perfect. I wanted to have guys that came in that could do that without me having to dress them up. So out of the blue, I get this call. Before Joey and I spoke, I was speaking to the guy in the band at the time of the Rejects, which was Dizzy and Trip Eisen. Those were the two guys that I was communicating with at first before I got to Joey. So it's kind of like Joey sent them in to fill me out and see if I'm cool, and then report back to Joey. And if he likes it, then he would call me, and that's kind of the process. So Dizzy, when I spoke, we got along great. We're still friends to this day. And we hit it off, and he's like, we like your band, we like your music and stuff, but I didn't know what they wanted at first. I just thought, I didn't know if they wanted me to be a guitar player or what. I didn't really know. And then Joey calls me and was like, hey, we want to use you in the band. We want you to be the bass player. And I was kind of like, oh boy, all right. I want you to be the bass player, but we want to use your music. I like a lot of your songs, so I want to take this song, this song, this song, and this song. And it started off with just a handful of songs. And at the time, like I said, bass player had just quit. We had just released the fourth record. I'm thinking, well, who's going to quit on me in this month? Who's going to quit and I was just, at that point, my daughter was 3 years old. I was working, I had my day job. I was just looking at any opportunity to get the fuck out of North Carolina and do this. And I'm like, this might not be exactly what I want. They want me to play bass, but you know what? Fuck it. I can do it. Let's go do it. I'm in. Sign me up. So I go in to Iowa 2 weeks after 9/11, my first time ever being on an airplane, terrified getting on an airplane. Get to Iowa, hang out for a week, and we go in the studio and we start and we track basically the what eventually became the record. We recorded The People Hate Me. Joey did all the drums. He had everything kind of done before I got there. Then I came in and played some bass, and then I sang on everything, and then Dizzy sang over my vocals. So there is an actual version of those songs that he's singing that I'm singing backgrounds on that have total different lyrics and all this stuff. And so we go and do that for a week, and then Joey goes on tour for 4 months with Slipknot, and we're just kind of sitting around going, now what? That was happening. And then Joey calls me, all right, I'm back from Slipknot. We're going to get together in a couple weeks. I want to use this song, this song, this song, and this song. And I'm like, well, fuck, now there's 12 songs. There's Dawn of the Dead. There's this, and so I go back up to record, and we're doing our first New Year's Eve show. It's like a little thing Joey used to do there in town. So we do that, and we're recording, and one night Joey just goes, I want you to be the singer of the band. And I went, that's what I want to do. And he's like, I feel bad, Ryan's my buddy. I love it, but in my heart, I know that you should be singing your songs. This is your music. It doesn't. And I was like, you're telling me, buddy. I know. I was like, it feels, I'm excited to be an opportunity and part of this, but I want to be the front guy. I want to sing these songs. And I did. And I got the gig. And that's pretty much how it happened. And everything was just, nothing was really planned out. It was all when Joey had that window open of Slipknot, it was, what can we get done as quick as we can? So everything was done that way. And at that point, when I became the front guy, so it's me, Joey, and Trip. Now we need a bass player and a drummer. So we've completed the record. We need to complete this look. We're going, well, what do we want to look like? We know what we sound like now, what we want our image to be. And we were like, oh, well, we love the early Sunset Strip stuff, Motley Crue, blah, blah, blah. And at this point, Motley Crue wasn't on a comeback or anything. I think Nikki Sixx was doing Brides of Destruction. So Motley Crue wasn't as talked about as they are now. The whole nostalgia.
Yeah, they were like 3 years from reuniting with Tommy Lee at that point, I think.
Yeah, so nothing was really going. So seeing anybody doing anything with a look like that was not normal then. And Trip calls us up, and he's like, hey, I just filmed a video with Static X, and my friend Eric is in the video. He's like a vampire guy. And we saw the clip, and Eric's got Nikki Sixx hair. And we're like, there we go. How's that guy? Oh, he's cool. I've known him for a while. He plays guitar, but will he play bass? the question. Okay. And then he goes, oh, well, I'm in a band with my this drummer guy, and he's this 8 foot tall, skinny Tommy Lee type kind of guy. And I'm like, well, boom, there's the package. So that's how it happened. And we literally didn't have time to recruit anybody or test it out and see if this works for a few months. It was literally, Trip went and jammed the songs. They made a VHS. Joey and I watched the VHS in his bedroom at his mom's house and went, I think they'll work. Cool. You're in. Then we fly out to LA. We filmed the video for Dead in Hollywood before we ever played as a band. Ever. That was the first time we ever performed in a room, was that video. And we're lip syncing in a morgue. You know what I mean? So that was our first time. We did photo shoots before we ever played as a band. And then we got together to do our first tour, and we had 4 days to rehearse. And then we got on a tour bus, and that's how we got to know each other. So it wasn't like longtime friends getting together. This is the dream. We all had our own mission in our head, and we're like, cool, we're all here. So 5 completely different personalities getting on that bus, and in a year we did what we did, and it was this complete chaos, madness, everything I ever thought I'd read in the Motley Crue, the Dirt book. I consider that the Bible then.
Yeah.
And we did everything that's in that book. Everything. Twice. And then we did it again on the second album. But that's the short version of how all that happened. It was literally just go, go, go. The red and black theme, the whole reason that happened is because when we all got together, we all had red and black hair. We all had a streak. Eric had some red in his hair. Joey had the famous red streaks in his hair. I had red and black dreadlocks. And I think Ben was the only one that didn't have red, or Tripp didn't have red in his hair. So I think for the video shoot, we put, I was like, man, I was like, this red and black thing, we should do it. We should do it. And Joey was always like, no, fuck it. I ain't doing that. It's like Striper. I'm not doing that. Yellow and black. This ain't Striper. This ain't yellow and black. This is red and black. We're the opposite. They're Jesus. We're the devil. And he was like, all right. That's how I sold it. So thanks, Striper. And that became the color code. And we, back then we didn't have anybody that we knew that made custom stage clothes or anything like that. We just literally had jackets, and we'd cut the sleeves out, and we'd spray paint stuff and safety pins, and we liked horror movies. We'd cut the horror movie t-shirts, and it just became an image with the sound. And it was just crazy how that created. And we all shaved our eyebrows off because I didn't have any, and Joey's like, fuck it, I want to shave mine off. And then everybody just did it, and it just became this. So we had our sound, and then all of a sudden we had our look. It was not thought out at all. It was just, do it, let's go, red and black, awesome, cool. We didn't have time. There was no time to plan this stuff out. It just happened, and that's what made it so fun. And with Joey being there, everything was at our hand. Anything he wanted to do, we got to do it because he was in Slipknot.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely remember the look just being a lot like if the Misfits had fucked Motley Crue,
Exactly. And we had different looks for different photos, and we'd always ask Joey, what we doing today? We doing stage makeup, or are we going street? We're going street. So street's when you wear your sunglasses or your leather jacket, not so much makeup. But when you go stage, that's when you don't have the sunglasses and you've got all the good makeup, so we had our different looks, and we kind of took that from all the bands. A lot of bands did that. Twisted Sister, most notably, they would make their old albums where you flipped it upside down. It was them with no makeup, and the other side was them, so that's where that influence comes from. So we weren't always done up and stage ready, but at the same time we still look like we were stage ready compared to any other band around at that time.
Yeah. I mean, and then speaking of Joey, one of the things that's always kind of stuck out to me when people talk about him in like interviews or just whenever he did interviews back in the day, it's that like stature wise he was a small dude, but he had like this big personality, right?
Yeah, he definitely did. And I learned everything from him on how to do this. And he was such a great sport about it, and a teacher, and he could have put me through the ringer, so to speak. And I've watched him do that to other people, but he was really cool to me. Like the first time I ever flew to Europe, I sat beside of him, and I'd never been on an airplane for that long. To be on an airplane for 6-7 hours was terrifying. And he taught me through it. Oh man, okay, well that sounds like this. He taught me everything. When I went to Japan, he taught me how to you go in with respect. Joey was very into everything he did, and he had a gang mentality with the band. It wasn't all about himself. He was like, we're doing this together. We're doing this together. We're doing shots together. You know, it was just, but speaking of what you were saying, he spoke, you know, way 10 times bigger than his actual size, you know, and he just had it naturally, you know. And I would do interviews, and the first couple interviews I'd sit beside of him and hear him talk, and I'm like soaking it in, going, all right, well, that's how you do it. And I watched him avoid questions that he didn't want to answer, and I learned how to do that. So I learned everything from him because it was right there. And he was such a celebrity with his status in Slipknot. I mean, I told people all the time, you always felt cool with him, no matter what, because he always walked around with me. We were just like, you know, the two-headed monster together. But I can't tell you how many people you would just see that were just these massive celebrities that would just talk to Joey. Like, you know, I remember being backstage at a award show, and Dave Grohl was just like, Joey, and he's just, they're just, oh man, I'm just talking about drumming and stuff, and I'm just like, man, this is fucking Dave Grohl here. Just, you know, anybody. It was just everybody, from all the guys in Slayer to all the metal guys I grew up watching on Headbangers Ball that I'd get beat up in school. You know, kids wearing Anthrax shirts, you know, they were there talking to Joey. So it was just and I met everyone through him for the most part, and being that he was such a talent on drums, you know, he just brought in all these crazy musicians that wanted to talk to him and respected him. And then when they heard Murderdolls, they're like, wow, cool, what are you doing with this? And then we're just loud, obnoxious punk rock band. They were just like, oh my God. I'll never forget Dave Grohl watching us on the side of the stage, and he was just like, he just had that look of like, I don't know what he expected, but the crowd hated us. We opened for Foo Fighters at one show, and we bombed so bad. And but again, I'm saying, it was just he didn't mind that. He loved that dynamic, to go from drums to being at the front of the stage and being this little punk rock guy.
Yeah. I mean, as much as like as the drummer of Slipknot, Joey was kind of like the preeminent show drummer of his generation. Like, arguably probably like what Tommy Lee was to like 80s metal, Joey was to like late 90s, early 2000s metal, drums wise.
And Tommy then Lee, another guy too that worshipped him as well, loved Joey, loved his style, and was like this to him, you know.
And then just on top of all that, like, he's just an insanely talented songwriter and like song arranger.
That's one thing a lot of people don't know, and I got to experience that firsthand. Was, you know, he literally took my songs and I watched him produce them, and he said, that part sucks, don't do that, don't sing like that, sing like this, do this, do this, do this, do this. So that when you hear Murderdolls, and then if you want to go back and listen to those original versions, you can hear that. You can hear what he did with that. He cleaned it up, he polished it, and he made it perfect. And for some people, they're like, oh, it's too perfect. I'm like, you know what? It compared to the drag queens, it is 100% perfect. But it's not a bad thing at all. Like, for me to hear my old music get crafted that way, it was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, I mean, I think it still retains all of the attitude of the drag queens too. Like, even like you mentioned Slip My Wrist earlier, and there's elements of Galactic Chicken shit in there, and then elements of the title track on Viva Los Violence in there, but they're like melded together in a way that, along with the rewritten lyrics, it still has that same attitude as the original. It's just like,
and Joey somehow listened to Slip My Wrist and Viva Los Violence and took that murder, yes indeed, KALLING part, and put it into that. And I couldn't see how that mixed together. But once we did, he just heard it, you know. And for him, it was just like this gold mine of songs. And like I said, he wanted these four, then he wanted these four, then he wanted those four. And then once the record was done, he's like, well, fuck, we should have did this song and we should have did this. And then that's why I love to say fuck was recorded later, because we should have did it the first time. And then live on that first tour, we were playing a couple other, we played Murder Pie was one of our songs that we were going to re-record. Cross-dressing goddamn son of a bitch was one that we were going to redo. And there was Devil Made Me Do It was another one too. So, and I kept telling Joey, I was like, don't get me wrong, I like these songs, but I really think the next album should be stuff no one's heard. You're right.
Yeah.
You know, and if we would have recorded right after we got off the road like we were planning to, you would have got all those types of songs, I think. And it's always one of those what if kind of thing. Like soon as we got off tour with Murderdolls, and the only reason we stopped touring in 2003 is because Joey was forced to go back to Slipknot. I mean, him and Corey were forced to go back and record that record. They had to. They didn't want to even stop to go do Corey was doing his thing with Stone Sour. We were doing our thing. And they had somehow like, oh, well, we're going to do this for just 2 months and we're going to go back to our bands. But that didn't happen. But we were talking to Bob Ezrin from fucking Alice Cooper Kiss fame. He was going to produce the record. I had songs written. If we would have continued, it's hard to think what would have happened. I think the UK, we would have dominated it. We were already there. If we would have came right after that and we had all this buzz and it just buzzed away. And once I realized it wasn't coming back, I went, well, maybe I'll just go out and do my own thing. And I did. And luckily I did, because I'm still here today doing my own thing, you know. But man, it's been a wild ride for 21 years is all I can say.
Yeah. Because I remember there started to be that whole cycle after Joey did Murderdolls and Corey did Stone Sour, where they would get pulled back to Slipknot. Then they would do things with each of their side projects again. And then it would just kind of like rotate like that for several years. But what was it like when you all finally did get back together to record Women and Children Last?
It was a completely, 100% total opposite from the first album. This time I'm involved in the business at this point for 8 years and doing my own thing. I'm already released 3 solo records, Gunfire 76, Bourbon Crow, all this stuff. So I've tons of stuff touring. That's what I kept doing. I didn't go back to my day job. So when we got back together, we were totally different people at this time. And I knew how to record. I knew how to write songs better now. I'd learned. It was like Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. Like, I've learned from you, but when we got back together, we also realized, it's been 8 years. We're not in our 20s anymore. Life has happened, and so to write those kind of songs again, it wasn't coming naturally. So to force that type of sound, we weren't going to force anything. So the music we had for that record was what we had at that time. A lot of that music, 99% of that music, was songs that I had written that I had put to the side because I wasn't sure about them. And when we started talking about recording, about 3 months before we actually recorded, I sent Joey 51 or 52. I had a CD that had that many tracks on it of song ideas. Not full songs. It could just be a chorus, a verse, and just something I did on a drum machine and at my home. And he went through 52 songs and picked out 28 that he liked. And that's what we were going to go in the studio and do. Now, we didn't get together. This is all on the phone, just listening to demos. Okay, we're going to do this. There's just a chorus and a verse. There's nothing else to the song yet. Well, that's what we're going to do. We'll get together. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. We got together, and that's exactly what we did. We had 28 songs on the list. We picked out the ones that we knew for sure. And then and that would be the 18, I think, this on Women and Children Last. That was the ones we knew for sure. The other ones that were on that 28 list didn't make it, but they were on the list for a long time. And the way we recorded it, Joey went in with drums. I sat in front of him and sat down in the chair with his Gibson, and I sat right in front of him, and we literally had our engineer sit there in the booth. And all right, cool. We're going to start the song off like this. It goes to the verse, get to the chorus. After the chorus, goes back to a verse. We literally talked it because all of our songs is rocket science. It's not rocket science, it's rock and roll. So it's got a format to it. And we would create the song. Zeus would track it. We may have to do it in a couple sections to get it all together. And that's how we did all those songs. And it happened so quick. We were just knocking them off. Just boom, boom, boom. Homicide Drive, done. Oh, that was awesome. Next one. And we nailed it. And like we had drum tracks done in 3 days for all 18 songs. Full songs done. And it just started creating itself. It was like weird science. We just kept feeding it. It's just and in 30 days we had that record. And we went in with the idea Joey can play drums, and we can play the rest of the instruments ourselves, because he can play guitar, I play guitar, play bass. We don't need anybody else. And Rahman, I brought him out just to hang out. I worked him into the budget somehow. I was like, hey, what if my friend comes out and videos the process so we can get the whole video thing? Okay. So he's videoing the whole process, which I do have the entire making of that album. I have all the footage. It's hours and hours and hours. Yeah. 30 days of it. He's sitting in the studio one day, and Joey and Rahman had knew each other from before. They had toured together because he had worked for Ministry, and Joey was with Ministry. And Rahman's in the studio one day, and he picks up Joey's guitar and he just starts playing it. And Joey looks over and goes, "Holy shit, I didn't know you were that good." And he goes, why aren't you playing these guitar solos? And he goes, I don't know. Joey goes, do them. And so Rahman started doing all the guitar solos on the record. And then we went, all right, he's in the band. And that's how we started putting the lineup together, because Joey didn't want to work with AC or Eric or Ben at the time. He had his reasons. He had did some stuff with them or something in between that time. AC and Eric were in Wednesday 13 at different points, and it didn't work out. So I couldn't go to Joey. Oh, let's, it worked out great with those guys, So it was just kind of like we thought it was just smarter just to go with a new lineup, and that's how we got the new guys and this everything. So it was just a total different animal. At that point, but we still had the same, idea, just to go out and cause trouble, make a fun rock and roll record. Joey wanted it to be a little heavier this time. He wanted to be a little darker this time, because a lot of people got to understand, being in Slipknot, being this aggressive fucking metal band, and you go and put lipstick on and fishnets, you're walking a fine line, And so he was very careful that he wasn't gonna, you know what I mean? Like, we would have never been, even though we love the 80s and stuff, we were never going to be like Steel Panther. Yeah, you know what I mean? He would kill himself before he do the Steel Panther kind of stuff. So it had to be, everything had to have edge, had to have the edge to it, had to have attitude, it had to have a little fuck you to it. And that's what made us cool. We were a glam punk band with this metallic edge, and we just made sure the attitude was turned up as loud as our guitars.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying too about the sound of that album, because there are songs on there that sound like they could have fit, as kind of connective tissue with Valley of the Murderdolls, but then there's stuff that sounds like it's the next evolution of that sound. And like, just some of the stuff that still stands out to me off of that album, like I always have to revisit Drug Me to Hell, Bloodstained Valentine, Pieces of You. Love the clap tracks on that one. And then Summertime Suicide. That always I always get like a little bit of a laugh out of that one because of how upbeat it is.
Yeah,
You know,
man. Summertime
yeah.
Suicide was such a cool. I love that song. That song is probably that would have been the first single, but we realized from the label real quick just how bad it is to have a song with the word suicide in it. It's literally just having you have no song if you have a word suicide in it, as far as like trying to get it on the radio. So whenever the label, we had been recording the Women and Children last, we've been there for about 3.5 weeks, and we had most of the record done. We had, the mix on it where anyone could come in the studio and listen to it. We could hear what it was kind of going to sound like. And the Golden God Awards had happened out in Los Angeles, so everybody was in town in LA. So the Roadrunner Records, all the executives and reps were there, and they wanted to come up to the studio and hear what we had been doing, because all they knew was Beyond the Valley. And hey, these guys are getting back together. What the hell are they doing? And I think, again, they were just making Joey happy. Oh, Joey wants to do Murderdolls, we're going to do it. Keep him happy. So whatever he wants to do, go do it. So I don't think they were expecting much more than another batch of Twist My Sisters and that type of record. So they come into the studio, a few of the people there, and they're cool people that we've known for years and we respect, and people that have signed all the bands from Typo Negative to Cold Chamber, you know what I mean? All these bands. Yeah. And so they sit down in front of the soundboard, and Zeus was like, all right, cool. And he played Nowhere. And soon as it started, you could just feel it in the room. You could see them start looking around, and then they turned around and they all did the over the shoulder, like, holy shit, we were not expecting this song. And Nowhere is like, it's got every radio hook you need for that. It's got a chorus, it's got everything. It's the perfect length, everything. And they were like, this is great, guys. This is, holy shit, this is great. What else you got? Summertime Suicide. And that was a cool feeling to see. I didn't really smile because but I was just kept we both had our sunglasses on in the back of the studio, just kind of watching there so we could keep our face there. And when that song came on, they turned around and they were like, wow, guys, holy shit. Like, they like, you've got a hit. And then you just seen all their minds start working, and they went, then when it got to the chorus again, they went, we can't get this on the radio. We can't get this on the, they were so happy. And then you just watched them just go, oh, what can we do with this? They were, and they never asked us as in like, you got to change this or anything. Like, my manager was like, he's like, nothing you can do with that, right? And I went, no. I mean, that's the beauty of the song. That's the coolest part of the song. It is this happy song about suicide. It's like, it's not supposed to do that. And so again, the ultimate, that's the story of the Murderdolls. Oh, you got this hit, but your lyrics, oh, I Love to Say Fuck is the catchiest song you guys have, but you can't play it anywhere because it says fuck 3,000 times. So yeah, it was funny to watch that, but
you can't put a chicken horn on I Love to Say Fuck, though.
Well, you can. You got the time like I did.
Yeah, no, that edit always cracked me up because like half of the song just becomes that horn.
That the reason that happened is because I was going to the studio to finish up the Frankenstein Drag Queens recording that day. We had recorded that album that had I Love to Say Fuck on it. And on the way to the studio, I was listening to the local radio station, and Kid Rock was on, like, maybe his first time or whatever, his first album. And there was some Kid Rock song on, and he had said like some curse words in it. And it like got into this part on the song. It was like, radio edit. Dun, 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 dun. I went, are you fucking kidding me? They just, instead of saying motherfucker, they just said radio it. I went, that's dumb as fuck. You know what would be cool? If we did that to our song. So when I got to the studio, I was like, what if we just put a car horn over every time I say fuck and just make the most annoying song possible? So he's like, okay. So we went in the sound library and looked up car horns. And the sound that we picked, the reason I picked it is because it's the exact same car horn sound that's used on Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 on their truck. So that made it even better for me. So when you hear that now, just think about that truck, the gauga, gauga. You know, and when you see Leatherface for the first time and he saws the guy's head off, that's it. So so thanks to Kid Rock, you have the edited version of I Love to Say Fuck.
You know, it's back when I bought that Frankenstein Drag Queens box set in I guess that was like 05 or 06. As soon as I got to that track, was that on the third album?
Third album, yeah.
Yeah. As soon as I got to that, like I was driving, and I think I was with my girlfriend at the time, and neither of us could stop laughing. Like we had to pull over into a parking lot because we were just cracking up.
And it's so loud. It's like
Yeah.
it's louder than the music. So it's like and then like it sucks the volume. It's perfect.
It's like every other word.
Yeah. And we actually shortened it so to make it fit, but if we did the original version, it would have had another minute of car horns.
Yeah,
always trying to annoy the audience was I don't know why that mentality had that was the goal of Frankenstein Drag Queens. I don't understand that, because by the time I got to Murderdolls, I was like, I want to make it, I want to do this. But before that, it was like, what can I do to cause a riot in this bar? Like we'd set off fireworks inside bars, just all kinds of stuff you're not supposed. I threw live fish into the audience one time at a show. I went to a bait and tackle shop and they were selling minnows, like these big minnows, and I got a dozen of them and I threw them out in the audience. Now I know that PETA's probably frowning on me for that, but this is the 90s, folks.
I mean, that's like Alice with the chicken, right?
Yeah. You know, I was just but in my defense, the place we were playing used to be a seafood restaurant.
You know, I mean, I feel like that's kind of just like the general like punk mentality is annoy the audience.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And now that I'm thinking about it, I will tell you one more of this is the most annoying thing we ever did, and I'm bummed that there's no video of it, at least that I don't think there is. I had the idea of us Frankenstein Drag Queens, we'd come out on stage and I would say whatever town, hey motherfuckers, we're the Frankenstein Drag Queens, suck our dicks. Da, 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 da. That's how we'd start the show. We'd come out and say something like, well, what did they just say? So we would do that, and we started in the first song, and the first song was like 2 minutes, it's the fastest song we got. I can't remember what it was, and it was like, you know, da, 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 da. And we walked right off and went outside, waited, came back out. I said the exact same thing, the exact same way. We played the exact same song again. And I said, thank you, and walked off. Came back again, said the same thing again, played the same song again, and walked off. Played the same song 3 times, left the stage. 20 minutes, the first half of the show was the same song. Then we decided to play the rest of the set. And after that show, we were thrown out of the bar. There was a fight. There were police called, and our drummer broke the window out of the bar in the front of it. I was at home in bed by 3 too, so didn't go to jail.
Yeah, well, silver linings, man. I want to be mindful of your time and not take up too much of your time. Do you have time for a few more questions?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. This year is also the 25th anniversary of probably my favorite Frankenstein Drag Queens album, Night of the Living Drag Queens. Really? Do you have any memories that stand out from that period?
a lot. That was a good time because so the first album was just like getting it started. I knew I had something cool there. And the band first started up, it was just three of us. And by the time the record had came out, our bass player quit and then our drummer quit. So I was the only guy left. So I was like, all right, well, I'll put another version together. And I couldn't find anybody. And there was actually Wednesday 13 was created for about 4 months, and then it didn't happen. So I was gonna call it Wednesday 13 and the Sci-Fi Scream Things. I had a logo and everything out for it. And then drummer and bass player come back. And no, actually, I'll take it back. We got a new lineup, did that for a year. It fell apart, and then the old drummer came back. So this is around 98 when we started recording that record. And the drummer we had at the time, in between the original drummer, Sicko, we had a huge falling out. He ended up taking me to small claims court. It was just a big ordeal. It was just stupid, And when it came time to do that record, I was just angry. I was angry. I hated my job. I was angry. And it was the best ingredients in the world to create that album. Every single one of those songs. That's why that attitude is just like that. Every song. And Mr. Motherfucker especially. That was the one. The song Let's Go to War is about that guy that took me to court. The second verse is, file that lawsuit, the know-it-all, he got the boot, and the crybaby goes boo-hoo. So Fuckyou. So that was about him. And it was just an angry record. We were at that point, we'd been playing for a little bit in the scene, and we didn't have any friends in the scene. We didn't want to be friends. It was just fuck everybody around us. And it was just a cool time, and we knew we had made a cool record. There was a cool buzz about us for what it was, in the town. And that record is the one of the Frankenstein Drag Queens catalog. That's our Never Mind the Bollocks of that catalog. That is 100%. There was no recording that record for weeks and weeks. It was done in 2 days because we didn't have the money to fuck around. So it was just like, everybody know your parts, don't fuck up. Drums, bass done all in one take. So it was really, really punk rock. And the way it turned out, it was just a good time. Like, I don't know how we survived not getting beat up with some of the stuff that we did, because it literally was like, fuck everybody.
Yeah, I mean, that album is probably usually, if I want to introduce anyone to Frankenstein Drag Queens, it's the one that I go with, either that or Viva Los Violence.
Yeah. I mean, it was just to me, I was kind of like, what would be more, it was always about shock value. I know we couldn't do what Kiss did. I know we couldn't do what Alice Cooper did. But what if you just walk into a redneck bar in a dress and go, and we would say offensive stuff, like whatever would say, everyone would call us, you guys are queers or whatever. And we would come out on stage and go, make a bunch of bring out the first note feedback and just go, beer is for queers. And people were like, did he just say I was a queer drinking? And like, that's the kind of guy. That's what we would do. I mean, I don't understand why. And it wasn't like I was some guy that thought I could fight or anything, or was wanting. We just wanted to make people angry. And we thought if you came to a bar and you were going to get angry and get offended, then you probably deserved it.
Yeah. I mean, when I was back in like my late teens, early 20s, I grew up in small town Kentucky. in like Elizabethtown, Kentucky. So, a little bit south of Louisville. And I used to do like red contacts, black eyeliner, had black hair down to here, would go through the drive-through at like Taco Bell and had the order memorized to get $6.66 on it. And occasionally you get like the cashier who you pull up to the window and she's like, "Do you want me to remove a penny from that so that it's not that number?" And you tip down the sunglasses and she sees the red eyes and you're like, "Now, why would I want you to do that?" And then she's like, "Oh my God."
You could have perfectly did the Teen Wolf scene. Go, I want a keg of beer. That's good stuff. I'm such a movie quote nerd. Anytime you could find a time to use that. I had the same thing in my town in North Carolina. I went and got a P.O. box. Now I was like, "Hey, do you guys have like 1313 or just 13 or anything with a 13 in it?" And they were like, going through the little book, like, "No, all this." And then you saw a number, and she went to the next page, and then she said she was thinking about. She went, "We got 666," and I went, "Are you serious?" He went, "Nobody in town wants it," and I went, "Here I am." And that became the P.O. Box 666 for Frankenstein Drag Queens, which is the greatest thing ever.
Yeah, no, like it's kind of like as much as you were saying earlier, like you're not like setting out to just like get into fights with people, but it's fun making people angry, and like especially in a small town like that. And the most interesting experience that I can remember from like a town like that is being out, like coming back from a show and like having on like a black kilt and like knee-high like leather boots and like black and white like striped tights and like the eyeliner and makeup, the hair, everything, and then you get pulled over by the cops at like 2 a.m.
Yeah, we were pulled over once as the drag queens going to a show when we were a three-piece, and our drummer used to borrow his grandfather's truck, and he had this old pickup truck with this huge like camper on it. His grandfather used to sell eggs. He was a farmer, and he had an egg truck. So we used to ride around in a fucking egg truck. And I used to, like I said, I used to pretty much dress everybody. So I would go to thrift stores, and if I found like a set of like nurses dress, so like, I buy all three, and like, hey, it's what we're wearing this weekend. So one show we all wore white, and then this one weekend I found these three like red, like almost like kabuki geisha girl, Japanese looking like lingerie things. They were like $4 a pop. I'm like, "Oh, that's what we're wearing this weekend." And we got dressed at the hotel and was driving to the show and got pulled over on the highway, and we're out on the side of the highway next to this fucking egg truck with white geisha girl face paint on, red lingerie in the middle of North Carolina on the highway on a Saturday night. Yeah, man. Like I said, there's stories. I don't think about many of these things until you bring them up. I'm glad they're coming off the top of my head like that, because I haven't thought about some of these stories in forever, but they're real. They really happen.
Yeah, that and going into like the small town Waffle House late at night dressed like that was always interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it just comes from, I guess when I think about like, why did we go on stage and try to start shit with people? Same way as just like pranking people, like pranks are fun. It's innocent. We're not trying to hurt anybody. We're just, it's a prank. It's a prank on your feelings. Hey, we didn't, and that's kind of how it happened. Before I was doing that, like I was never, all people in my age were, in their teens, everyone was experimenting with drugs and drinking and stuff. And I had no interest in any of that. I was literally watching movies, learning how to play guitar, and just focusing on that. And on Friday nights, I'd get so bored. I used to go to this local restaurant that was like a seafood place that everybody in town would go on Friday nights. It was all the older people would go, and I would walk up to the front door of the place, and I would go to a local like Rite Aid or whatever, and I bought a thing of Vaseline, and I would just take a big chunk of Vaseline. I'd put it all over the door handles, and then and then I would go sit in my car and just watch people walk up and touch that thing. And I would sit there for hours and just laugh and go, because it'd be like one guy walking his family in, let me get that door for you. And when they just touch and go, oh God, I spent hours doing that. So that's where it comes from. I'm just always wanting to fuck with people. I don't want to hurt them. I just want to mess their day up a little bit.
Yeah, it's like before they started like curbing in the entire drive-through lane at fast food restaurants. You go through, you put in the order for like a ton of stuff, then you just pull out so that the next car behind you gets that order, and then the car behind them gets their order, and the whole thing's just backed up. You just watch the whole like system break down.
Pranking stuff, I used to do prank phone calls. I found actually a couple weeks ago, I found a CD of all my prank phone calls that I used to do, and like, and I did that. I don't know. I've always found a way to entertain myself, and it's always, for me, I've always had a sense of humor with it. It's never been serious. You always got to have your comedy with your tragedy.
Yeah. And I got one more question for you. When y'all did Women and Children Last, you got to work with Mick Mars on a few songs. What was that like?
Amazing. I was just thinking about that yesterday. I was listening to the records. I was actually thinking where Mick Mars was. I was like, man, how cool would that be to have Mick come play guitar with us? I wonder if he would. And I was like, at the Whiskey, and I was like, oh, he doesn't live in LA anymore, and he lives in Nashville. And I was like, we're not playing Nashville, but if we did, I wonder if he would come out. But to answer your question, the whole thing, the way Mick Mars came about is mainly because of me always talking about, again, I'm always talking about my influences, the bands I love or whatever. And I can't remember exactly what happened where Mick came up. But the guy, you've seen the Mad Manager videos we have online?
Yeah, I got this knife. It's a good knife.
I got this knife. We got this knife. I got this knife. Man. I got this knife. We got this knife. It's a good knife.
Yeah. So the Mad Manager videos were our little funny videos where we picked on our tour manager guy. This guy, that's in the tour, the Mad Manager guy, he's worked with everybody from Slipknot to Marilyn Manson, Nine Inch Nails, Motley Crue, everybody. And he worked for Motley for a long time. And we were in the studio and we were doing Drug Me to Hell. And we were talking about the guitar solo for it, what we were going to do. We didn't have a guitar solo for it. And I picked the guitar up and I started doing these little guitar bends that I call the Mick Mars, that his sound he has, and I was like, man, this song it definitely needs a Mick Mars kind of vibe solo. That's what I'm hearing. And I said, needs a Mick Mars. And Mad Manager goes, why don't I just call him, have him come up here and play it? And I went, what? He goes, I'll call him. And Joey goes, you think he would? He goes, if you want him, because I'll ask, what's he going to say? Yes or no? Whatever, won't hurt to ask. So he literally called him and said, hey, I'm in the studio with Murderdolls, and they love Motley Crue, and we were talking about your style, and you want to come play guitar? And he goes, yeah, I'll be there in a couple of days. So we sent him the songs. We sent him that, and then I was like, let's get him on 2 songs. So we sent him that and Bloodstained Valentine. And he had a couple of days to work on it, and he came to the studio. So the studio and the house that we stayed in was all connected. So we didn't have to go to a hotel or anything. We were just constantly there. And Mick comes in, and he came in full. I mean, he looks kind of like what I am, right? He had a hat on, he had sunglasses, he had fucking platform shoes on, and his wife or girlfriend at the time was carrying his guitar. I mean, it couldn't have been more rock and roll looking. You know what I mean? Like, he just walked in, he was carrying his guitar, and he sat down, and I could tell he seemed like a little nervous, and maybe because he feels like we were young kids or something, or I don't know. But instantly I said a joke And then he told a joke back, and then it became us telling the most horrible, offensive jokes you could possibly tell, and he was part of the gang instantly. And he goes, fuck it, let's go out to the studio. And we sat at the table for about 20, 30 minutes and chatted, and then we said, fuck it, let's go out to the studio. And we went out, and he hooked his stuff up. He had his guitar, he had that flesh yellow colored Telecaster with the pick guard. He had that guitar, which we were just like, oh man, there it is. So him and Ramon got to go into the amp room and geek out, and Ramon got to do all the tremolo stuff from Kickstart My Heart on the guitar just to test it out in the room. And then we sat down with Mick, and Mick brought 2 wah-wah pedals and set them up right beside of each other. And I'm like, what this motherfucker got 2 wah pedals for? And he's like, yeah, I've been doing this thing, and he's playing double wah with platforms. And we're just going, what the fuck is it? Like, it works, and it sounds cool. So he was literally doing 2 wahs at once, and he had came up with what you hear as those leads. He just like, yeah, this is kind of what I'm doing. And the only thing we really kind of talked him through was when it comes out of the lead on the Bloodstained Valentine part, I said dun, 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 dun. It's like a little guitar part he's doing.
Yeah.
I actually sat beside of him, and he was just kind of noodling, and he's like, he goes, when I come out of this, I think I'm gonna, nah, 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 nah. And he did something. I went, well, if he went nah, 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 nah. He did it, and he's like, yeah, that's cool. And then that's how it was. So we were in a band for that evening, and that was such a cool thing. And just again, Mick Mars was like, he's like Ace Frehley to me. He's just one of those. He's one of those, Space Ace is from outer space. Mick Mars is from Mars. That was my 2 rock and roll guitar guys that I always dug. And so yeah, Mick came out and he did his parts, and it's so fucking cool. And when you hear it, I mean, it sounds like him.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just insane that he did that at that level with that band for like 40 years with Motley Crue, where his bones were like fusing together the whole time too. So he's just like in constant pain, and he's just like playing at a high level. Yeah,
I mean, he doesn't let that affect him, which is crazy, because I don't know how he's able to do that. But just being able to go in a studio with someone like that you grew up listening to, it's just, I don't know. Those are the things that are worth more than any money or anything. Those memories are gold.
Yeah, and it's kind of a bummer seeing what's happened with him too, between him and Motley.
Yeah, it's one of those things where someone's asked me, how do you feel? What side are you taking? Yeah. I'm like, I'm not taking any side. The music world is cruel, and the business is cruel, and unfortunately that got aired out. But like I said, I could tell you all these cool things about Mick. I can tell you how nice Nikki Sixx has been to me. I can tell you how awesome John Five has been to me. They're all upstanding dudes. It's unfortunate they had some disagreements, but the music speaks beyond any of this bullshit, and that's just what I care about.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that kind of stuff probably happens, a dozen times over the course of a band's lifetime, and you just never hear about it. So
if the music fans out there knew half of the stories that I can't ever tell about the bands and story, and myself as well, I'm included. Like, there's so much that people just don't know, and that's kind of one of the unfortunate things about being in this business. Is some of those the curtain's been pulled back to see who the wizard is on Wizard of Oz stuff on certain things, and sometimes it's not what you want to see behind that curtain. Sometimes,
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Wednesday, for taking the time today. Again, the Murderdolls 21st anniversary tour kicks off October 20th. Wednesday's latest solo album, Horrifier, is out now on Napalm Records. And I just appreciate you taking the time to be on the show once again.
No problem. It's my month. It's October. I gotta I got to talk all things me and Halloween.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way this month. Thanks again.
No problem, dude. Thank you. See you next time.
Run, you, run, you, run.